Hey there, Clint.
Hey, Grandpapa, tell me about when you were a kid.
Well, you see, Clint, I grew up in an era known as the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age was an era of economic flourishing.
But corporate greed and corruption caused problems for workers and small corporations. As the son of farmers and as a railroad worker myself, I got to see a lot of it firsthand.
Like what?
As you know, my parents were farmers in Illinois.
Who faced many issues. At the time, railroads were expanding production due to faster, cheaper, and more extensive transportation. They also gave people a new form of travel. However, railroad companies had unfair practices. Some railroads gave discounts or refunds in the form of rebates to companies with large shipments, allowing them to ship their products at a lower cost than their smaller competitors, including farmers. Meanwhile, railroad companies worked together to maximize their profits by creating railroad pools, to fix rates and share businesses to reduce competition. Also, if an area only had one railroad line, the companies would charge extremely high rates. These issues helped create the Granger movement. Although I never joined myself, my father did, and he told me about a lot of these dealings.
Wait, whose dealings?
The Grangers. They were a powerful farm organization that called for railroad regulation because of the effect discriminatory rates had on farmers. They became so powerful that they caused laws to be passed in Midwestern states in the late 1860s. These laws, called the Granger State Laws, regulated railroad rates and operating practices.
They're allowed to do that?
That was the issue. Railroad companies claimed the Granger laws violated their right to property as given to them by the 14th Amendment and claimed they infringed on the national government's power under the Constitution to regulate interstate commerce. The issue was debated in the court case Munn v. Illinois, which questioned the validity of Granger law. The company Munn and Scott was found in violation of the law, and after reaching the Supreme Court in 1877, the Granger law was upheld. The court concluded states had the right to regulate private enterprises that impacted public interest while setting the precedent for grain storage and railroad rates. This ruling was then overturned in the Wabash v. Illinois case. After the Wabash St. Louis and Pacific Railway Company sued Illinois, this time the Supreme Court ruled controlling interstate commerce was a responsibility of the federal government. Therefore, Granger law then became unconstitutional. Following Wabash v. Illinois, the federal government passed the Interstate Commerce Act, forbidding excessive charges, pools, rebates, and rate discrimination. The act also created an Interstate Commerce Commission, ICC, to protect against violations of the act. The ICC was the first true federal regulatory agency, but was ineffective at controlling large corporations. The government also regulated interstate trade through the Sherman Antitrust Act. It was meant to ban monopolies and trusts in which businesses fixed prices and restrained trade, but the act was hard to enforce and weakened by Supreme Court ruling.
What were you doing back then?
Back then, I was a railroad worker in Chicago. In 1877, my pay and many others were cut, causing us to consider banding together to form a labor union. Members of a labor union seek to protect their rights and demand better working conditions. They used collective bargaining to negotiate terms with employers. However, I was hesitant to join because unions faced many consequences. Members' jobs were insecure, especially if they participated in strikes. And scabs, people who replaced union members who were fired, were ready to take their places. To stop workers from forming or joining unions, companies would create and share blacklists to deny of union members jobs when searching for work.
What else did companies do to stop labor unions?
Companies forced new hires to sign yellow dog contracts, which required is that they never join a union. Companies also requested and received injunctions from courts which barred union activities.
So what happened to you after your pay got cut in 1877?
Well, like I said, I considered joining a union, and so I did. I then participated in strikes alongside railroad workers across the country. Protesters destroyed property and halted railroad travel and business. Soon enough, state militias and federal troops' involvement resulted in over 50 deaths and the firing and blacklisting of many strikers. This conflict caused the National Guard to be created. The strike was later named the Great Strike of 1877, and afterwards I continued fighting for my rights by joining the Knights of Labor.
Wait, Grandpa, you were a knight like those in the Middle Ages?
No, Clint, not that kind of knight.
Night like the time of day?
No, Clint. The Knights of Labor were a labor organization which advocated for better working conditions for employees. It was founded by a man named Uriah Stevens and was later led by someone named Terrence Powderly. Originally, it functioned as more of a secret society, but by the time I joined, it had begun acting more like a labor union, encouraging strikes and setting up negotiations. The organization grew to be the largest labor association in America, but it wouldn't last.
What happened?
The Haymarket Affair in 1886. I was at a peaceful rally in Haymarket Square in Chicago, but after the police arrived, someone in the crowd threw a bomb, and then the police began shooting at us.
Did you get shot?
No, however, the event did discredit labor unions, particularly the Knights of Labor, who were seen as violent.
Wow, what happened next?
After the Knights of Labor, I joined the American Federation of Labor. The organization was founded by a group dissatisfied with the Knights of Labor. It focused on higher wages, improved working conditions, and shorter work weeks. We elected Samuel Gompers as president.
Did anything big like the Haymarket Affair happen?
Not with the American Federation of Labor, but in 1892 there was the Homestead Strike, in which the Carnegie Steel Company tried to eliminate a steel union by locking out workers at the Homestead Steel Works, who refused to accept increased production demands. The manager of the plant, Henry Frink, hired guns from the private security company Pinkerton to protect his plant from strikers. A battle ensued between the Pinkerton guards and the strikers, which had been broken up by state military men. Afterward, the union was destroyed.
What happened to you next?
Well, in 1893, the American Railway Union was formed to unite railway workers. At the time, many people believed that the large unions were not specialized enough to make a difference for railroad workers. I decided to join in 1894, following a successful strike against the Great Northern Railroad. However, shortly after I joined, our luck ran out. The Pullman strike began after the Pullman Railroad Company cut pay but refused to lower rent. Government force eventually intervened and ended it. The federal government then issued an injunction against important union members, then sentenced them to prison. The American Railroad Union ended along with the Pullman strike.
What happened to you after the American Railway Union fell apart?
I kept my membership in the American Federation of Labor. At the time, an opposing labor union was formed. It was called the Industrial Workers of the World and was founded in Chicago in 1905 by socialists, anarchists, and Marxists, including William D. Haywood. It mainly represented farmers, miners, and loggers, and was organized on a class basis. However, the group was revolutionary and aspired to overthrow the wage system.